Hello, everyone. Welcome to your last session, Create Your Life with Intent, aka Tech Career Plan Action and Practical Resources. Super excited to talk about one of my favorite topics ever. So, with that, let me share a little bit about who I am. I am a computer engineer at heart, tech leader as my day job. I write a newsletter called Intent, which is really focused on the three big things: personal finance, career development, and personal growth. The idea is to be very intentional about your life and live in a manner that you're making thoughtful, intentional, and mindful decisions. I'm also a speaker, which is why I'm here and super glad to be speaking with all of you, and the author of From Ramen Noodles to Riches, a sarcastic guide to financial independence. Really, the reason I want to talk about this is, as you can see, I've had multiple different careers already, and I've had to be very intentional about each one of these decisions. Most of these transitions didn't always come easy. I was lost, confused, and had moments of uncertainty that I know some of you might have already been facing. So, figuring out how to navigate this and really being clear on my path is something I care a lot about, and now being that driver of my life and taking a proactive approach to anything else I want to do is the only way I know how to live, which is actually a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today. Most people, in my experience, let life happen to them. They tend to take the back seat, the passenger seat, and honestly, it starts with, when we were children, from seventh grade to eighth grade, from high school to college, from being a junior in your career to then being a senior in your career just automatically without trying for it, right? So I want you to take a moment to realize that you are in full control of your life. And ultimately, it's up to you in terms of what happens. Yes, I know some things may be uncontrollable, and those are called gravity problems. I read about this concept in a book, but gravity problems are essentially like gravity. We cannot control it. If I take a pen, it's going to drop because that's how gravity works. So when you come across those situations, just brush it off. There's nothing you can do about it, so don't let it personally get to you. Our agenda for today is essentially talking about where you are today, finding your focus, figuring out who you are at your core, running tiny experiments, and being able to eliminate noise and executing, and therefore becoming intentional in any action that you decide to take. First, I want to start with this. My first year out of college, I had a mentor who I still remember meeting in an office, and it was our second or third time meeting. And he asked me about my 10-year goal. I was like, I have to think about that. Then he asked me about my 20-year goal. Then he asked me about my 50-year goal. And then eventually he asked me about my 100-year goal. I kind of just laughed in the moment and I was like, well, I know that one. I probably won't be alive for that. It'd be crazy if I lived to 100 and I guess I would have been 121 because this happened when I was 21 years old. So I laughed and replied with that. And he said, even if you won't be here, I want you to ask yourself, who do you want to remember you? And what do you want to be remembered for? What is the legacy that you're leaving behind? And I think that's something that we should all think about. For some people, leaving a legacy might have to do with their own kids. For some, it is to do with how they're giving back in their communities. For some, it may be about their academia and their work. So really take a moment to think about what you want your legacy to be. Now, before we dive into how to create a life with intention, I want to address another very important thing. We're going to start with where you are. There's actually a sign that says this on Stanford's campus as a reminder to students. And last I checked, there hasn't been a time machine invented for us to go back in time. It only moves forward. And two, there are not going to be any regrets in this session on what's happened in the past, like we talked about. It's a gravity problem, so let's just move past it. Awesome. So I like to think of the IN in intent really standing for intuition and looking inside. You have to be able to ask yourself the hard questions. What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? Where do you come from? If something feels heavy, why is that? What are you afraid of? Is your daily life a reflection of who you want to be or the kind of life you want to live? What makes you feel the most alive? The thing is, only you know the answers to these. Let me share a personal story here. I know not everyone has this privilege or is able to do so, but I was able to take a solo trip to India to interview my grandparents. And this really touches on bullet point number two. I think all the other questions you're able to answer kind of just on your own. But I realized growing up, my grandparents were so kind and were always feeding me the best of food, but I never really understood what their life was about. Who did they want to be when they grew up? What kind of goals did they have? What did they play with? What did they eat? And there were two reasons I did this. One, to genuinely understand and learn about their lives, and two, to understand where I come from and what all of this means for me. So, one of the things we'll talk on is the five whys, which we'll touch on in just a few slides. But the last thing I want you to remember about this slide is that only you know the answers to these, and it takes a lot of digging to understand and get there. So I would highly encourage you to spend some time, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, take yourself out on solo dates and ask yourself one question at a time to continue to dig deeper. Okay, this is our first activity, the Wheel of Life. It's a widely popular tool used for career coaching. Essentially, there are 8 different aspects of life, as you can see here, and the goal is to understand where you are focused and where you want to be. What I want you to do is write down in each one of these categories and rate yourself where you are from 1 to 10 in each one of them. Take a few minutes, feel free to pause the recording, and figure out where you stand in each one of these categories. As you are going through this activity, keep in mind that we are all human at the end of the day, and being a 10 out of 10 across all of this is physically impossible. Trust me, I've been there. I really struggle with perfectionism, and as someone who's tried to do it all, it just doesn't work that way. We have phases of lives, and ebbs and flows where we're focused on a few things and aren't able to focus on the others. Once you're done with that, circle 3 categories that you want to focus on and pick 1 or 2 goals from it. If you're not able to pick a goal, that's okay. We're going to talk about that as well. So for me, I'll just share a quick personal example as well. I'm a year in my role at work, and I am very, very focused on my health and fitness. Also getting married later this year. So relationship, health and fitness, business and career are my 3 main target areas. And I have a goal in each one of those categories to be able to continue to fine tune my skills and work on the next step. Okay, I know there's probably 2 types of people watching this. One that already knows what their goals are, and the second who doesn't. This slide is a bit more focused towards the ones that do know what their goals are. However, if you're the second kind, don't worry, we'll get to that in a little bit. The method is called the 5 whys, and it was actually developed by Toyota for their production system, and it's a root cause analysis technique that iteratively asks the question why 5 times, just like the tool suggests, to uncover any underlying cause of a problem. And for us specifically, it helps us understand the deeper reason behind our goals. So I have an example here on the screen, but I really wanted to share a personal one I went through a few years ago. I knew I wanted to start a newsletter, and I called my friend about it, and I was like, I really want to do this, but I'm confused on how to get started. So he asked me, why do you want to do this? I was like, well, I want to share my lessons that I've been learning. And he's like, why do you want to share your lessons? And I go, to help others. And he goes, why do you want to help others? And I was like, well, I didn't really have the help that I wish I did. So this is my way of giving back. So then he asked me, why do you wish you had help? And I say, life would have been so much easier. And then he goes, why do you think life would have been so much easier? And I'm like, well, because I have a blueprint. Someone's kind of telling me or sharing their experiences on how things have worked out for them. And so eventually it helped me come to the reason I'm starting a newsletter is to help others share lessons I've been learning, share stories and inspiration from other people in my life, and really help create a system for other people. So I have another example on the screen in terms of if your goal was to start a podcast about AI, well, why do you want to do that? Because you want to share updates. Why do you want to share updates? To establish a personal brand. Why do you want to establish a personal brand? To create a career opportunities. Well, why do you want that? To increase income, influence, professional leverage. Why do you want to do that? To create that financial security. So something to think about. If you have figured out the one specific goal that you want to focus on, maybe in one of those categories, feel free to pause the video again and start figuring out and doing a root cause analysis on what your deeper why is. Awesome. Some of you may have heard this concept of flow, but I do want to quickly touch on this. Honestly, the best definition is when time stands still, when nothing else seems to matter, when you're feeling energized or engagement or enjoyment out of what you're doing. The question to really ask yourself is, when do you feel flow? Is there a time or activity that comes to mind as I've read that definition out loud? Why did you feel flow then? For me, it's always when I draw or paint. And it's funny, I don't really draw or paint on a regular basis, but it's that like meditative state for me. And then there's other times at work or while writing my newsletter where I feel flow. So I know that's the right activity for me. Remember when I said there were two kinds of people, ones who know their goals and ones who don't? Well, this is for people who truly have no idea what they want, maybe just a rough of I want to explore X or Y or Z. Trust me, I've been there. I blame it on the million options we have and decision fatigue that we all face. So, a few years ago, I decided if I truly want to create a life that I want to live, I need to figure out what I want to do. And the only truly way to go about it is just by running tiny experiments. In fact, I just think of my entire life as running a bunch of tiny experiments. My first one was actually about, you know how people say you would need 8 hours of sleep a day? I ran a tiny experiment on myself to see if that was actually true for me and my body, or is 7 hours better, or was it 9 hours? Turns out, after running my tiny experiment, I need anywhere from 8.5 to 9, so a little bit more than what people claim is the average hours of sleep you need. And eventually, I took that whole ideology of running that experiment into other aspects of my life. So we'll talk about a few examples here. Over the years, I've worked with many people who are confused on what they want to do. Again, I've been there myself. Sometimes you have an idea in your head, but you're not sure that's the one you want to follow. Maybe there's multiple roles you're considering. In fact, just yesterday, I was talking to someone who wants to either pursue a different role at the company or go into people leadership. And I asked him a very simple question. Have you tried shadowing anyone in this field? Do you have mentors in this space? And the thing is, it's okay to not know what you want. This slide is really about running these tiny experiments in life. Really think of it as a science class and going through that. So there's 3 things I want you to consider here. 1, pick a goal. 2nd, pick a time frame. And then 3rd, pick success criterias. So I have 2 examples up on the screen, one as a founder, one as a product manager, and you can kind of think about, okay, the goal maybe is you want to learn what it's like to be a founder, and if that's really the path you want to take. Maybe you set a time frame for yourself. I just added 21 days, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months. And maybe your goal is to talk to these founders, ask about the good, bad, ugly, come up with the easiest product idea you have. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, and try to launch it. See how far it gets you. And the key here is continuously assessing and monitoring that progress. Remember to pause and ask yourself, what feels natural and when do you feel flow? Going back to our wheel of life, in the 3 categories we picked on, I think it's a great idea to bring those here and see if you can run a tiny experiment in all 3 of those different categories. Okay. I'm assuming most, if not some, have definitely heard about a personal board of directors. If you haven't, at a super high level, a personal board of directors are people that you have chosen that help you make better decisions. Just like a company has board of directors, these people are board of directors for you for your personal life. I'll say that again. Remember that these people are here for you. As you're running these tiny experiments, be sure to consult with them and tell them about what you learned, what you liked, what you didn't like. Sometimes they see a completely different side to you that you don't even know about, or they're able to guide you to ask certain questions, or meet with someone else to help continue in that direction. So take a minute here again, feel free to pause the video and write down maybe 5 people you want on your personal board of directors. Could be someone at the company you're working, someone who's outside of the company, definitely your life partner, someone want you've never connected with but want to be on your board of directors. As you're writing that down, I want to share another cool thing I saw a new hire do. As he was starting in his new role, he actually just ended up creating a group chat called My Lifeline. And anytime he had questions, he would put it in that space. Not saying that trick is for anyone, but I just thought it was such a great idea to physically create a group chat and ask for all of your board of directors for opinions or questions or anything else that comes up. Okay, eliminating the noise. Most things in life are distractions. Have you ever started a day with like 6 things on your to do list and ended with 20? I feel that way all the time. And I read somewhere that Warren Buffett has this system, and I wanted to share it with you all. So let's say we want to break into tech and we have this list of to do items. We want to reach out to the hiring manager, stay on top of AI trends, apply for jobs in the field, continue researching on roles, designing the perfect cover letter, updating your resume, getting a certification, finding your unique differentiator. I mean, that's a lot. What if you circle just the 3 things that are essential and urgent that you get done sooner rather than later? Now, everything else, according to his philosophy, becomes your not to do list. And yes, this is an actual list of things that you should not focus on. I've had several years where in my planner, I've created a not to do list. And whenever I get distracted or swayed, I just go back to that list. Remember, I told myself I would not do this year. Therefore, your actual to do list becomes just the 3 things that you had initially circled. It's insane how simple this concept is, and it completely changed my view on things. It's not always possible to do so, but taking this approach has helped me become super intentional with the work that I'm getting done and doing it well instead of just checking the box. I want to share a few other concepts and then we'll kind of wrap it up here. But over the years, I've realized motivation and discipline, both of them don't work. Motivation has spikes where you see something or you hear something or you read something and you're super motivated, but then it fizzles out. Discipline, I thought, is what I needed, and I'd been focused on it for a really long time. And then I realized that that only leads to burnout. Instead, what I found is creating a system is what works. So, quick example, a few of my friends have been running every Sunday. They're doing a half marathon training. I'm not training for a half marathon, but they go on long Sunday runs. And they asked if I wanted to join for their regularly scheduled 8-mile run. And the thing is, I actually ended up completing this 8-mile run without stopping because of that system. I know for a fact if I wanted to motivate myself to run 8 miles, I really don't think I could do it. And if I focused on discipline, it wouldn't happen either. But because I had an accountability, a system, a plan, people, a place to meet with, a time, it was a really big deal for me to be able to run those 8 miles. So as you finalize the few things that you want to work on and have figured out, okay, this is the tiny experiment I want to actually implement, I highly recommend creating a system around it. Okay, I'll spend the least amount of time on this slide because I know all of you are great at execution. In fact, most people are. Once they figure out what it is they want to do, coming up with that plan, it's fairly simple. And now with the help of AI and all these LLMs, you can also talk to these chatbots to help come up with that action plan. The only new concept I want to share here is the no zero day. This concept actually came from a Reddit post that blew up about 10 or 15 years ago, where this individual comments talking about how a 0 day is when you do nothing towards your goals, and a non-zero day is when you do just the tiniest amount. So think about the time or days when you're lazy, super tired, maybe it's 11:58 p.m., 2 days until it's the next day. What is the bare minimum that you can get done towards your goals in those 2 minutes? A great example of this in the fitness space is maybe you're doing one push-up. Maybe your goal is to write a book and you write one sentence. It's the bare minimum just to make sure you have no 0 days, and just another way to make sure you're continuing to execute on those goals that you had set earlier. I used to be super shy and afraid of sharing my goals because what if I fail and then this person that I told my goal to will know that I failed? So someone told me to challenge that thought. So the next tip I want to share is tell everyone your goals. So I decided to tell one of my mentors that I really wanted this next role. And that person ended up connecting me with another person who was starting this whole program for people who are ready to pivot. And then that person connected with me with two other mentors. And all four of them were key people for me developing my skills, continuing to pursue the role that I wanted to, and it helped me land my dream job. Your dream tech hiring manager might only be 2 conversations or 5 conversations away, but the only way to get there is if you start telling everyone your goals and what it is. So I really like this quote on the slide as well. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So let's continue to bridge that gap and talk to other folks. I want to bring this back to our original reason, becoming intentional, but really being the driver in your seat. It's about, we talked a lot about those big decisions, but it's also about those small choices daily. As you go about the day, ask yourself, what are you doing towards your goal? Who are you choosing to surround yourself with? What is something you have agency over? And if I'm being very, very, very honest, if you really want a different life, you already know what needs to change. So it's just about time you make that change happen. And I'll end with this. Mindset is everything. Two people can have wildly different reactions to the same situation. I've seen it myself with different team members. So remember that the two things you can control at any given time is your attitude and your action. With that, thank you so much for staying and listening to this recording. I really, really look forward to seeing what lives you decide to create for yourself. If there's any way I can help out, don't hesitate to reach out. I have added my link to my newsletter where I talk about personal finance, career growth. Sometimes I even put in career opportunities, share stories of others who've made pivots in their career, and then feel free to connect on LinkedIn to follow along my journey. And again, happy to help out in any way. So here's to creating a life with intent. Thank you again and hope that was helpful.